Top of the morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the listeners out there. A hearty and healthy Irish hello. You're listening to the Celtic Coach radio show where science, spirituality, and self-discovery meet. Think about it in terms of if Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, and a lighter version of Tony Robbins, if they had a baby, they would birth this kind of a show. We like to have some humor. We like to have some fun. We like to have some science, spirituality, and a little bit of Celtic nonsense thrown in. My next guest, I'm very honored to have this gentleman on the show. He hails from close to, we're going to say Boulder, Colorado, because I think Louisville, I don't know if anybody knows of Louisville, but Boulder, Colorado. He's trained in a Zen monastery for nearly 14 years. He spent over 10,000 plus hours in meditation. I can say safely that I've spent 10,000 plus hours watching television, but that is very different. Just a wonderful being. He does Zen Life Coaching. I think he's known as the Zen Coach. So the Zen Coach and the Celtic Coach are going to do their best to entertain you and educate you and hopefully make your life a little nicer. Topic of the show today is how to have a nicer life. Now that seems doable to me, so I'm looking forward to what Alex has to say. So he does Zen Life Coaching, online retreats. He's author of 4 books on Zen, offers Zen meditation to people, places, organizations, business. He's big in demand, this guy, and I want to share something that I read from his website that I thought was really beautiful, and I thought maybe we'll open up the show once we take a minute or two just to get to know Alex. But he says, I learned how my own thoughts kept me stuck, and how I could access freedom to authentically succeed in all areas of my life. Now I thought, boy, that'd be nice. So we're gonna talk about that today. With all that, ladies and gentlemen, put your virtual hands together for our guest today, Mr. Alex Mills. Alex, pleasure, sir.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm honored to be on your show, and thank you for looking up all that stuff. I hope that I can actually speak to what you pulled from my website. It's like one of those old jokes. I wrote it so long ago. Somebody really brilliant must have come up with that.
Yeah. It's like I'd love to be the person my dog thinks I am. I'd love to be the person that's on
my website tells me. That's exactly right. Wow, that's pretty cool.
I know. I write that down. Somebody write that down. Gosh, there's a lot of different places, Alex. I think we should have some fun, and I want to talk to you about now nearly 14 years. So
that's right, 13 and a half.
You didn't quite make the 14 years, Alex.
No, it was coming up. It was like one of those things where, you're getting close to your birth date or something like that, and you don't want to just, anyway.
Now, I checked with that monastery, and they said that enlightenment comes the day after 14 years.
It's true. It's true. It's like one of those things where you miss out, and you just have to start all over again. What is it? You got to put another quarter in the slot. I probably had 10,000 hours on video games and television myself. So that's how it works.
Yeah. What's life like in a monastery? I mean, is there TV, party? Is there
no?
What do you do all day now?
Well, it's one of the ongoing jokes is we just worked nonstop. You wouldn't believe it, but that's what most of the time that I spent at the monastery was doing. It was something called working meditation. So we had 3 different types of meditation. There was formal sitting meditation, there was walking meditation, and everything that wasn't those 2 was under the category of working meditation. And that included speaking on the phone with people, about retreats and workshops that we were offering, to cleaning outhouses, to working in the kitchen after we washed our hands from working in the outhouse. So that's what we really did. And it was all in service to the retreat center that we were running. So people would come far and wide to do workshops and retreats with us. And whenever the monks weren't just practicing there on our own, we would have people fly in and do these trainings. And we pretty much maintained the place and did everything necessary to offer practice to ourselves and the world. And that included a lot of work, building things. I had several different positions, sometimes at the same exact time while I was there, meaning that I was the cook who would be in charge of making sure that everybody was fed. Sometimes on retreat, that would be as many as 45, 60 people. I was in charge of the garden, making sure that we had food that we were growing to offer to everybody. And then I was also in charge of the small business off the property and things like that. And so there was a lot to do to maintain the place. And it was a small band of monks that were in charge of doing all of that.
It's a good business model, Alex. Hey, you're going to come and meditate, but we're going to call it working meditation.
That's right. That's right.
All day long. Well, you're meditating.
You're going to be meditating.
You weren't.
We promised you,
that, Alex, at all.
That's exactly what it was. You know, it's funny because a lot of people come there and they have whatever expectations they have, and then it bumps into the reality of being there, which is you're there to give up everything to be in service to the practice. And I look at that a lot as it was one of the gifts that I received from being there, which is out in the world, I can abandon myself and say yes to certain things and then not show up for them. But at the monastery, I was very much required to continually keep saying yes to things, because at the beginning, you're not given all of these responsibilities whatsoever. You're just cleaning things and following around, with somebody, crew or somebody doing the work. But it's only after some time that you've been there are you given responsibilities. So instead of being the one who's cleaning, I'm in charge of the cleaning crew, and then I'm in charge of an entire area of the monastery.
Yeah.
And so, I love that aspect of it, because I had to continually keep saying yes to some really scary challenges that were presented to me along the way, like, facilitating a group. I don't know how to do that. Well, you've been here long enough, so here's how to do it. You've been doing it on a smaller scale within the group. You've seen how other people have done it. And so off I go. And I don't know, it's really powerful, because I had to see myself through all the voices that would say, you can't do this.
Now, how long was it before you started sneaking out to watch television? I mean, did you do that?
There is actually a Zen story about a monk who would climb over the fence to go out into town to, do all the the forbidden stuff. The nearest town was quite a trek away.
Wow.
We were off at the end of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and so the joke that I like to tell is that even if I decided to say no, it'd be a long, hitchhike ride out to wherever I had to go. So,
wow. Did you go through Did you go through any Jones process, or like what do you call that?
Where's Jones?
What's the word, when you're coming off something?
Like getting off of the crazy mind and then entering stillness and quiet. The detox, is that what it is? Detox from society?
Yeah.
It was startling. So I write a lot about my monastery experience in one of my books, A Shift to Love. So if anybody is actually interested, I don't know if it's okay for me to mention the book title. Okay. So A Shift to Love is really the book that I share stories about what it was like to actually be at the monastery. And, my partner, Karen, Karen, she said after reading that book and the stories that I've written in there, she got a really good sense of what my life was really like there, because there's what you think a monastery is like, and then there's actually the day-to-day life that's there. And so, at the beginning, it was very shocking in a way, like what have I just done? I left San Diego, which was beautiful all the time, and sunny and warm. I had everybody that I loved around me. And I'm on this bus for hours and hours and hours. And I end up going through pouring rain at this desolate place at the end of a dirt road. No joke, it was actually at the end of a dirt road. I got dumped into a hermitage, which was actually a small trailer for like 1 or 2 people. And I couldn't, my story, like that opens up the book. I was trying to light the kerosene lamp in the hermitage with a wet box, just striking repeatedly, thinking I'm going to go completely bonkers in just a minute, because it was just, it was crazy. So, but
you survived it.
I survived it. I absolutely did. And it was more than just survive. I felt like I'd found home because for the first time, I was given an opportunity to actually explore who I was without the filter of constantly bumping up against other people and their projections of me, their expectations of me, the beliefs I had about who I should be in society and all of that. So I had come there to discover myself, essentially. And no one there was going to support me coming up with identities about ways I ought to be with other people. So the entire environment was extremely supportive. Within a couple weeks, I was gifted in a retreat that was going to completely blow my mind and open up my world to all of this, all the processes that go on inside of me. It's what I help people with now today, actually. What I do is I've taken most of the essential teachings and the practices and the tools that I learned there, and I've distilled them down into something that people can do wherever they are out in the world. So they don't have to go, my joke is they don't have to go out to a monastery at the end of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere and train for years on end, hoping to get something.
Yeah. And they can keep their TV.
Yes, you can keep your TV, and you can keep your browser, because you're going to need it in order to do the online courses. So that's a plus.
Yeah, very nice. Alex, tell us a little bit of, because you're affectionately known, I think, as the Zen coach, and myself, the Celtic coach. What is Zen What is Zen Life Coaching? How does that work now? Tell me.
So it's an ever evolving process, actually. But I alluded to it in the last thing that I said, which was I've taken the essential things that I learned while I was there at the monastery, and I knew that when I came out of the monastery, I had 2 directions I could go in. I could either continue doing what I had done before I'd gone in there, or create something brand new, and something completely unrelated to what I'd done in the Zen monastery. Or I could go and actually offer. I was reluctant at first to take on the title teacher or coach or anything like that, because what I wanted to do was simply this. I didn't want to be an expert on anything. I didn't want to let people in on thinking that I was better than them, or that I knew something more than them, or that I had the answers or anything. I didn't want to be, as some people typically call them, like this guru type of person who is going to be there having people touch my feet and all this kind of stuff. I'm too ticklish anyway for that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to offer what had helped me, because I was the least likely candidate to have done what I did. So I stumbled upon a book. It blew my world open. So that was the first blowing open. And then the second one was the retreat that I did at the monastery. But so the first look at it was, I got really interested all of a sudden in Zen. I wasn't the religious, spiritual type of person at all. I had found the book in a New Age bookshop that I joked around in my book that it reeked of incense, and it had all these corny statues and things like that in it. And I was very skeptical about all of it. My girlfriend wanted to be in there. That's why I followed her in. And
always
anyway,
a good reason to start a spiritual life. Impressive.
Right? Yeah. It's love. Love brought me there. But
you could be a rock star, or you can be a monk.
That's correct. Yeah,
Either one
I
works,
could
I
have.
think, fine for the
Yeah, I mean, I would have had a different life experience for sure.
baby.
Maybe we don't ever know that, but yeah, that was essentially it. So Zen Life Coaching is nothing more than me helping people explore what's going on inside of them that's creating this resistance or friction with life. And so to go back to your topic for today, which is how to have a nice life, I my feeling is that what gets between people having a nice life are, and I talk about this everywhere in my courses and in my books, but there's these thoughts, voices in our head. I like to call them voices because it helps us get clear that they are separate from you. We have so many phrases in our culture like I beat myself up, or I'm my worst enemy, or I get in my own way. And it's just this misunderstanding about how we work on the inside. So when I say voices are telling me this, it's much easier to see that that's separate from me. This is being done to me because I don't honestly, in my experience, I've never experienced myself antagonizing myself. It's not this strange Fight Club scene where I'm punching myself in the face. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not really how it works. So I wake up in the morning and people can really relate to this image of being downloaded, right? I'm being downloaded with who I am, what I have to do today, the things I'm worried about, the things I don't like, my problems, etc. It just goes on
Bowel
and on
movement,
and on.
am I going to have one or not?
What's that?
Bowel movement, am I going to have
Bowel movement.
one or
Well, chances are good that you might actually have that, but
now, Alex, just so I'm clear, because you kind of you said it, and I want to make sure that the audience heard it. So what you're talking about when you say voices in your head, you're talking about the thoughts that we have just,
yeah.
going
That
through our
just
head all day
constantly
long.
keep coming. That's right. But I specifically refer to them as voices to get
Yeah.
them out of my thoughts, because my thoughts implies that I'm actually creating them. And to a certain extent, we have the potential to actually do that. When we're conscious and present, we can actually create whatever it is that we want. We set intentions, we operate from this place of conscious, compassionate awareness, and we can act from that place. But what gets muddled up and in the way of us having a nice life and being able to have a say over what kind of life we want to create are these voices, these thoughts, if you will, that that talk to us. I mean, one of the
And
clearest.
direct us as well, right?
They do what?
And direct us.
They direct us.
They
Yeah, they
talk
have
to us, they
they have a
tell us what
direct
to do.
influence over us. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the process goes hearing them, which I recommend people actually spend some time doing, actually paying attention to them, getting clear about what they say. This is the step that is critical to having a different relationship, which is don't believe them. We don't have to believe any of it. So hearing is different than believing, right? So believing is taking it on, agreeing with, accepting, becoming part of whatever it is, and then acting on it is where we really get into trouble, right?
Yeah.
So the voice says this, I believe it, and then I do something with my life about it. And this is where we get in all sorts of trouble. This is how the anti-nice life gets created, actually.
This is how wars happen.
Yeah, or from big to small disagreements, or major life changes, right? Like, I'm gonna just leave this, I'm gonna just start this. I have, my favorite way of talking about the voices is they come from a place of something wrong, not enough, and they also talk us into doing that which is unhelpful for us, like eat an entire bag of potato chips, spend hours on Facebook, give someone a piece of my mind, blah, blah, blah. They talk us into what is unhelpful, and they talk us out of doing what would actually be helpful, like exercise, meditate, eat well, work with a coach that could help you create whatever life you want, whether they be Celtic or Zen, a little shameless plug.
Either one works.
Yeah, that's right. Just slide that one in there. Anyway.
You're smooth, Alex. There's no question.
I know. I just nilped you. And it's my
me,
NLP thing.
Let me ask you. I heard you say something, and I thought it was quite profound. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
You said your thoughts are not your own,
mm-hmm.
or your voices are not your own. Now, if they're not my own, then Whose are they?
What are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we talk about this for a good long time, but in a summary, we, if you, whatever belief system you want to take on, I choose not to have one or implant one. This is more like, go look and see for yourself. So there's what people say we came into this world with before we actually had language or anything like that. Do you know, like, there's certain babies that are more extroverted, there are some babies that are more introverted, whatever. Nobody did anything differently. Sometimes they're in the same family. You'll see that you'll have three different kids in the family and they'll all have their own unique way of seeing the world. They were raised by the same parents, so the thought is, okay, well, how did that happen? Anyway, so there's that. There's the karmic element of it, if you will. And then there's the conditioned aspect of it, which is what we're taught to believe. And in the process of being socialized into life, children, again, you'll have to look and see for your own experience, but it's a brutal process that lots of people go through as they're kids transitioning into young adults and then adulthood. And so even if they come from the most loving parents, the interpretation of a child is such that, if mommy goes and answers the phone instead of tending to me while I'm crying, the message is I'm being abandoned or I'm unlovable. So I don't want parents out there to freak out and go, oh my God, I'm destroying my children. They already have all that kind of stuff going on already. So the way to be with it is like, this is unavoidable. Everybody that's ever been a child and is now in society has gone through this socialization process, unless you're still throwing food across the table at people and, grunting or something like that. You have that conditioning that you were once this way and now you are this way. And you fit in and you follow the rules and you know what's right in your group and you know what's wrong. And so this is my long-winded way of getting to, so if these aren't ours, this is where they came from, is a collection of all of these ways that we've been taught and brought up in our environment and all this kind of stuff. And now it's colliding with the moment. And the moment is available. We have every possible way of being open to us. It's just that because of this conditioning and because of this karmic conditioning, and this feeling of separateness too, which is the ego element of it. It's like, it's it's all about me, it's mine. I experience myself as separate from life because of this ongoing commentary in my head. And so that is what is being downloaded into us, and that is what's running underneath of everything that we do. And so it was designed originally to help us navigate through life. So instead of mommy or daddy having to beat me to stop me from doing this thing, there's a voice inside my head that beats me up to stop me from doing the thing that would get me into trouble. So we develop these habits or these ways of being that have been successful for us, right? So take a child who enters a room with a bunch of adults. The adults are partying. They're all laughing. They're all having a good time. The kid runs into the room and all of a sudden the entire room gets quiet, right? And they look at the child suddenly and then they bust out laughing, okay? So one child will run off and be completely intimidated by that experience. Oh, they're laughing at me, I'm in embarrassment. Another child will ham it up, right? It'll be just like, yeah, here I am, right? And so whatever successful strategy implemented in that moment gets carried over, and it's what we're constantly referencing. So this is what we're up against when we're trying to find freedom from any of that, to have the entire spectrum of how we can act and create and live that is open and free rather than dictated by these habitual knee-jerk reactions and patterns and habits and belief systems, etc.
Yeah. Share, Alex. Would you mind sharing a story from someone that got Zen'd by you? in terms of your coaching, could you share a kind of a before and after? Like, because I want people to understand a little bit, not only that, these voices are constantly coming and going and we believe them, they direct
Mhm.
our thoughts, they direct our actions, especially if we make meaning about what these
Oh,
thoughts are and who
absolutely.
they are and what they are, all that stuff. Um, but I'd love to hear like a little story from you about uh,
Sure.
working with someone kind of before before they knew about the voices slash thoughts,
Sure.
and then after. What could someone
Yeah.
expect if they were to take
So,
on what we're talking about here?
yeah. Wow. I had several people come to mind actually, and it's going to be interesting to see who I end up picking. But early on when I came out of the monastery, I had a woman come. I'll give you a few, but they'll be really short, so I don't take up too much time on this. But so a woman came to my meditation workshop. This is back several years ago. And then she contacted me soon after, and she wanted to know if I could help her because, and I haven't worked with somebody who is experiencing a debilitating experience um, in quite a while, but she was one of my first people that I was talking to. At that point, I was a coach, and I wanted to work with people who were not, depressed or struggling to get above water, right? But at the time, I was new to this all. I knew I could help her, and so I wanted to work with her to see if I could help her with this. And so, and I'll tell you what this was. She called me because every week she was experiencing a panic attack.
Mm.
And this was really new to her, and it was frightening for her to deal with this. And so,
I've had those out there, very frightening.
yes, yes. And so I end up on the phone with her, and I give her an exercise to do, and she ends up taking it on. She's a very successful woman, actually. Um, Collecting degrees, she had degrees in almost everything because she wanted to really do an amazing job with her profession. And so she had the discipline to do the exercise that I gave her, which was every 20 minutes, she would check in and hunt the voices down. So I had a little conversation with her about what the voices are, how they work. And I helped her find out what it was that was starting this whole panic attack. And funny enough, it was the thought, I'm going to have a panic attack. And right, that was the first thought that she identified. And so she was going to be going, see, the voices like to work in unconsciousness, so they'll come at her, right? But if you take on the tact of going after them, it changes the dynamic entirely, and they hate that. I talk about voices as an entity so that it helps people understand that in the light of awareness, they don't exist. They only exist in unconsciousness. So for her to set an alarm every 20 minutes to go hunting for them and looking for them, completely nowhere to be found. And so I saw her posts recently in on Facebook, and I reached out to her and I had a conversation with her. And one of the things that brings me great joy is, she said, if I hadn't talked to you and if I hadn't worked with you, I'd probably be off in a corner somewhere on Prozac, debilitated. And so, so I'm really grateful that, I met her, I was able to help her, and that she had that experience. She's really successful. She's happy now. She's having a nice life. And a woman that I'm currently working with right now is in my 30-day online retreat. So I have two 30-day online retreats. One is called Heart to Heart Compassionate Self-Mentoring, and the other one is Help Yourself to Change. And they work as a pair. One leads to the other. It's not like you could do one or the other. So she's finished Heart to Heart. She's moved on to Help Yourself to Change. She's on day 6 of Help Yourself to Change. And just following along with somebody along their process. I coach them along the way too. So they have sessions with me. So I help clarify what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. But she shows up for herself day after day after day, doing this work. And it's like watching a dark room slowly start to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And she starts to see more and more and more. And my favorite way of thinking about this practice is it's an awareness practice. When you see how everything works, you stop being debilitated by the mystery of these socks in a washer type of experience where you're like, you can't figure out what am I supposed to believe? What am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to do? Why do I say I want this, but I don't do that? And so everything is a big question mark in a really frustrating, suffering kind of way. And what we do in the retreat is we lay all the socks out and we start to match them up and we start to see how they go together. And the magic works on its own. That's what's so I just get the tingles when I say that, because that was my experience of it, is that it's so different from every other thing that's out there in the world, which says, go get this piece of information, learn this, attach this onto yourself, and that'll give you the answers, right? It's like this formula. What the retreat does is it's a process of take this apart, put that, take this out, look at it. How does it go together? It's a self-discovery process. And in that self-discovery process, you see what is you and what isn't you. And it's in stark relief. It's no longer confusable. And because it's no longer confusable, you just naturally start choosing the thing that you actually want. So people have an experience of actually learning how to coach, mentor themselves in a compassionate, loving, kind way that encourages them on toward whatever it is that they want to do with their lives, instead of what we have in our heads is this critical, judgmental, harsh, unkind, unloving, unhelpful oftentimes, do this instead. I know you say you committed to meditate, but what would really take care of you is, sitting on the couch eating bonbons and watching 10,000 hours worth of television, right? Yeah. So
give us some questions, Alex, so I want to be an advocate for the listeners right now.
Sure.
Give the listeners some questions that since in coaching we know that questions can be the answers, right? What are some questions that people could start to ask themselves so that they could start to notice and become more aware of the voices?
You just said it. What are the voices saying? So one of the things I start people off right away with is take an experience that you're having. It could be a challenging experience. It could be an opportunity that you have. Like, take this job, do this, move to this city. Or it's a problem that they're experiencing. I can't have it. I don't have any free time. My wife is, whatever. My kids are doing, whatever's going on for you right now.
How do I get more toilet roll?
Yes. How do I get more toilet roll? Exactly. So pick whatever it is. I don't think we have that issue here any longer. Is that the case where you are? I think we finally gotten on top of the toilet.
We use a lot of toilet roll here in California.
You guys.
Yeah, we're full of. Never mind.
I don't. We don't go there. We don't go there. All right. So I would ask, get out a piece of paper, get arm's length distance from what goes on up here. Start to take really good dictation about what the voices are saying. So what do the voices say here? What do the voices say there? What's the next thing that they say? And after a while, people will start to realize, wow, that's really fascinating that when I see them as voices, you get much clearer about how it works, how it keeps you stuck, because you'll often have conflicting voices around it. There'll be like I want to go, but there'll be also a voice that says, but wait a minute, I want to stay too. So that's very interesting, right? There's a part of you who wants to leave, and there's another part of you who wants to stay. And then you drill deeper into that and say, okay, well, what do these parts have to say about that? And then they'll often have, we explored this at the monastery. We call this exploration of duality. It's the building blocks the voices use to create suffering over situations. I see it all the time when I'm working with people. It's this all or nothing syndrome. Yeah. It's like I either write my book and share everything that I've learned with the world, or the voices are saying, well, everybody's already done that before. Don't do that. It's silly. So they talk them out of doing anything. And it's this, I want people to see how it works so that they can start questioning it and moving on to the next phase. Now that's just a little teaser. That's the opening, right? Because after a while, people are going to be like, okay, well, what do I do with them? And now that I see them, like what's the next step?
Well, the first step is to, as you say, take out a pencil and paper, arm's length, and just start to, whatever's going through your head, write it down.
Get it out.
What would step 2 be then after they do that?
Step 2 would become the foremost expert on whatever it is that their challenge is. A woman that I'm working with right now, she's a one-on-one client of mine, and her biggest, her project is anxiety. So her entire life, she experienced anxiety that was debilitating. And she did the online retreat, and then we just started doing some one-on-one coaching after that. And now anxiety is not what we're working on, but it's the undercurrent of what she's practicing for herself. And so the step 2 process is using whatever it is that is your personal challenge. I don't care what it is. It's like, how I look is the thing that's causing me to behave the way that I am. Or a feel, it could be anything. My relationship to stuff is the thing that's causing me to suffer, which was mine when before I went to train in the monastery. I obsessively collected things nonstop. I just had all these books. I had all these CDs. I had all these everythings. And I would have done the same thing with Zen books had I not actually sat and meditated, but that's another story. So what you're doing is you're using the thing that is your problem or your challenge, and you're using that as your sparring partner. So you're becoming the foremost expert on it. So that's what my client was doing with anxiety. She's becoming the foremost expert about anxiety, learning everything she can about that. So if you want to...
Writing that down also? So as you become the expert, you're starting to notice. So what are some things that people have written down? Like, just give me an example of that.
Well, do you have one? Like, we could play with this if you'd like to. Like my whole thing, I explored how the voices would talk me out of meditation when they would say something like, tomorrow, you can always do it tomorrow. So that's a perfect example of a voice talking me out of doing something that I said that I was going to do. You don't feel like it is a very popular one, right? And the language is everything. They say you, right? That was a dumb thing for you to say, right? And it's a clear clue that there's something separate from us that's saying you to me that is causing me to struggle and suffer over this. So I think it's really freeing this is the first thing that would be a freeing element for people to start doing, which is to start getting conscious of what is unconscious, what is running the show in the background. Oftentimes when people hear about the voices, it's the first step into something really big for them, because for all along they've been believing that, well, if it's mine and I'm thinking it, therefore somehow I'm responsible for creating it. So they have this whole elaborate system of, I'm going to think positive thoughts to cover over the negative thoughts. And whenever I have a negative thought, I'm going to beat myself up into having positive thoughts. It's just
it doesn't work, does it?
It's just this working.
Control the voices?
No. Yeah, the whole point isn't there's no way to control the voices. People say, at some point, are these voices going to go away? And I tell them the bad news is no, but the good news is no too, because they're your sparring partner. So my client is using anxiety as the tool she's using to constantly invite her into staying present all the time. Because if she doesn't, that takes over, right? I think people who actually struggle with this sort of stuff are in the best possible position to actually be free, because they have the motivation and an incentive to that somebody who is just coasting along on, my life isn't wonderful, but I'm not unhappy either. People who are like this can kind of tread along through life for a really long time and just I'm going to make do, it's not
Yeah, yeah,
great, but it's not bad either. They
comfort.
miss out on the opportunity to be free, right? Until something major happens in their lives, like someone close to them dies, or they get this terminal illness, God forbid, knock on wood or whatever. And then they have no support structure in place for this type of work to free themselves of the voices. And so I like to start with people as early as I can, because I'm one of the youngest people I've worked with. He just finished both Heart to Heart and Help Yourself to Change. He just turned 21. I think he's the youngest person I've worked with in a capacity where he just signed up on his own, and I have people who are retired, 60 plus, who are going, wow, I wish I had had something like this when I was a kid growing up, because I could have lived my life differently. I like to reassure them that, no, that's just the voice trying to take away any kind of, freedom that you have in this moment. That is the voice. Yes. Yeah. That's a very favorite tactic.
What I'm getting out of this, Alex, is that the voices in toilet roll are with you for life. There's no getting away from the two.
No, they go hand in.
They go hand in hand.
No, well, I wasn't going to say hand in hand, but
yeah.
yeah.
There's many places we could go with that,
Alex. I'm dropping it.
I better have a drink of tea here and pull myself together. So in terms of having a nice life, Alex, and in terms of, I'll use the word working with or observing or being conscious of the voices, we write them down. Number two is we look at what they're saying to us. We become a master of.
That's right. We're using them as our tool for freedom.
That's wonderful.
Instead of it being this thing that is going to debilitate me, I turn the energy around in a very Aikido kind of move to, it is now the greatest source of what I need to do to be free, because it requires me to be present. And anytime that I'm present, it has no power, but I do.
Yeah, well, that's powerful. Is there a step 3, or is that the whole process? I get it that, like coaching has these questions and things like that, but it's like this, there's no end to the depth you can go in exploring yourself, because you're we're infinite, right? And so, so the next levels that I play with people on are the subtle layers where the voices exist that aren't outright after you, you know what I mean? Because some people struggle with, the extreme is the panic attack, right? Or the beating somebody up with their, you're not enough, you're worthless, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the subtle layers of how people have always chosen to. So I was working with a woman who's always on the outside looking in, right? So she's an extroverted life. She's never chosen to do anything adventurous or have friends or a community or anything like that. And so she's going up against the karma of the voices talk me into this kind of life, right? Now, here's what I want to create instead. And it's often this kind of flip from, and this is what people see in the online retreat too, is the amount of resistance that's built up around you not doing anything different than you've always done. When you actually cross the chasm and do the thing that the voices tell you can't do or shouldn't do, it's often this freeing, liberating experience. And if you do that sort of thing enough times, you start to realize that quite quickly sometimes that the voices don't have anything to offer you. As a matter of fact, the more they scream and holler or get in the way or have an opinion about something, the more you need to choose the exact opposite of what they're saying, because freedom is on the other side of what they're trying to talk you out of. And so there's lots of layers with that. Do you still now we'll call you an expert. I mean, you weren't exactly 14 years, but you were nearly 14
the,
years.
the 14 plus 1 would have sent me over.
I know. This would have been a whole different conversation. We would have been talking about.
I know. Are you sure you're talking to the right guy? Because I might know some people who have been there longer.
I did see the nearly. I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll
nearly 14, nearly enlightened.
Do you still fall into the trap of believing your voices, Alex?
Yeah. I mean, it's a process, though. It's very different from somebody who is starting out. This is the thing that we used to talk about at the monastery. We'd have people coming in to do workshops and retreats, and we'd be in a group situation, and monks and neighbors who had been practicing for many, many years would talk about the voices and the relationship with them. And oftentimes there'd be somebody in the group that's new or retreating that will say, wow, these monks have been practicing for so long and they still struggle with this sort of thing. What kind of hope is there for me? And what our teacher would say is, look, there is practice at the level you're doing it, and then there's practice at the level that the monks are doing it. You're at the level where you're still and she would say this in a loving way, but what she's saying is that you're still on the stage as the character in the play, and you still think you're really living life, right? The monks are practicing on a level of they're in the audience watching the play, knowing that it's completely fiction, and they're talking about it from a place of this is what's going on, and are able to articulate the ability to disidentify from the trap that they've fallen into and are now using that trap to help them out of that. You're not doing that yet. And so the game is never done, Dermot. Like the Buddha practiced till the day he died. And he practiced not only to pass the teachings and the possibility of freedom to others, but it was also, and I project this, I don't know this, but I know that I'm doing the practice now and I'm offering it so that it keeps me in the game, so that I'm constantly looking at it, because that's what my teacher did when she left the monastery where she trained. She knew that if she left and didn't practice herself and didn't offer it and was not required to show up the way I was required to show up at the monastery, the way she was required to show up at the monastery, then the voices would just find their way back in again. And so it's not a once and done kind of thing in my experience at all. This is like the meditation is every day. Practicing is every day. This kind of exploration is every day. And I'm always eager. So my experience when the voices show up is like this. How did they get there? How did they trick me this time? Right? It's just very different than, damn, I'll never get this. How long is this going to keep going on? Right. I'm a failure. I should just give up, said the voices.
You catch it earlier.
Yes. Yeah, you catch it earlier.
So you
That's really it. That's right. You see through it. You're like, oh, okay, that.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. What now? I kind of have I suppose you could call it a thing, but like when I hear about mindfulness, I think to myself, well, I already have that. Like my mind is already full of so much garbage. What I need is mindlessness.
Mindlessness, yes.
Oh, what do you, when people say to you mindfulness, how do you explain that, or how do you experience that?
When I came out of the monastery, we didn't talk about mindfulness as a thing at the monastery. Yeah. I only found out about that phrase, or that it was a thing, when I came out.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, believe it or not. I mean, we used be mindful,
yeah.
Right? But mindfulness as a thing, as a thing that people were teaching people how to do. So here's my experience of, when I first found mindfulness, that it's the same thing with meditation. People will say, oh, well, I already meditate. I don't need to talk to Alex, or I don't need to do anything with, like meditation and mindfulness are, in my experience, the doorway or the foundation. And that's like the beginning. This is like basic, right? This is what then there's this whole process that I learned at the monastery, which is exploring beliefs and assumptions, projections, identities, a thought cycle process that goes on, and mapping that out and getting clear about that, disidentifying, and then choosing and learning how to center and coach and self-mentor yourself. I mean, for me, mindfulness is like getting present, being here is an essential tool to be able to start directing your attention where you want it to be. Because until you learn how to keep it where you want it, it keeps wandering off over here, and you just get really confused. And it's a helpful thing to know how to do as you're doing this deep inner work. It slows everything down so that you can actually see the socks aligned instead of jumbled up in the washer the way that they are, right? So it's like so mindfulness and meditation are the equivalent of working out in the gym, okay? And everything else that you do in life, from lifting that heavy box to the top shelf to running a marathon or training for an Ironman or something like that, that's the practice, right? That's the metaphor or the parallel or the how they go together, how I like to talk about them.
Give the listeners, Alex, if you would, like a 1 minute or 2 minute little technique that they could do to help have a nicer life. What would you suggest or share?
I have a guided visualization that I've created where you get to actually see yourself from the outside. So often people don't actually get to experience who they are. You can do this for yourself. You can record one for yourself, or I can share. I don't know if you have the capability to share links or anything like that, but I could share a link to the exercise and people could do it themselves.
Yeah,
but basically,
we'll put it with the recording. But if you could share something here,
yes.
like 2 minutes, something would be great.
Yeah, okay. So I can have people close their eyes right now, unless they're driving. If you're driving, don't close your eyes, please. I can't assume any responsibility for whatever happens to you.
Or operating heavy machinery.
Or heavy machinery or anything like that. Wherever eyes are required to be open, but go ahead and close your eyes and turn your attention to your breathing. Allow your breath to gently and mindfully relax you. Noticing the air as it enters your lungs, fills your lungs, and fills your body. Allowing the air to leave your lungs, leave your body. Now I'd like for you to please consider something that you're struggling with. It could be something that's current. It's something that you direct your attention to whenever there's a stray moment that's unfilled by something. Perhaps it's a worry or a situation. Whatever it is, allow yourself to see it and to feel it as though you're in it right now. What are you saying to yourself? How are you feeling? What's going on? Now, I'd like for you, in a way that you know how to do, I'd like for you to leave your body right now and step outside and see yourself there in that situation. Having this problem or issue. Notice that person there. What's going on? Can you see how this person is struggling with this situation? How do you feel about this person? What does this person need? Imagine this person as someone you care about deeply, someone you unconditionally love. What would you say to this person to reassure this person? See if you can go ahead and say that to this person right now. It's time to go back now. See if you can go ahead and find yourself back into that person that you were just observing and settle in to being this person once again. Notice how you feel. Is there anything different? If not, that's okay. Simply allow yourself to return your attention to your breathing. Allowing your breath to fill you and leave you. And when you're ready, begin by wiggling your fingertips and your toes, the muscles of your mouth and your face. Perhaps stretch a little, and then gently and mindfully open your eyes. And this is the point where I would invite anybody that was listening to this to go ahead and perhaps journal about what you saw in the exercise, what you experienced, and maybe even what you said to the person who was there having the difficult, challenging time. Because part of what I offer in the retreat is a practice and a tool to be able to start shifting relationship with ourselves around from the voices constantly being in charge to allowing compassion and self-mentoring and self-coaching to be in charge. And we have quite a different life experience with ourselves when we have someone that actually has positive regard for us. And that's what we start to cultivate. So anyway, that would be, you asked for it, that's what I have to offer.
That was beautiful, Alex. And one of the things that I got from that is, in terms of having a nice life, we don't have to do 10,000 hours of meditation. It can be as simple as that. That was, I don't know how long that was, a couple of minutes. We can do little things like that just to center, to ground ourselves, to come back to ourselves instead of getting swept away with COVID-19 and just all the, there's always something going on in life. Like,
yes, absolutely.
In the 50s, it was the Russians. In the 60s, it was burning bras. In the 70s, it was disco. In the 80s, it was big hair and great pop music. There's always something going on to grab our attention, no matter what era we're in, right? And we can always just come back to ourselves in a moment.
And in a moment, it's shocking how short a time we actually need. And I discourage anyone who is thinking about, I can't meditate unless I have 20, 30, an hour to sit. I start people at 5, and if 5 is too hard, then do 2.5. The voices are always going to constantly scream, do more so that you can fail, so that you can be discouraged from doing the one thing that could actually bring you back here. And as you said, whatever's going on, being able to be here is the single most powerful tool that we have, because, as the time that we're spending identified with the voices shortens, and it's like a split second instead of days on end, imagine how much more effective we can be with our attention here more of the time, because this is where the action is happening. And we can be in the middle of all of those things and still have that place inside that is unshakable. And that's what I would love that for everyone.
Yeah, this is where the action's happening, and this is where life is happening.
Exactly. This is all we got. Right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really got that from that little exercise. Thank you for sharing that,
Good.
Alex.
Yeah, you bet.
That was very helpful. As we wrap up, Alex, take everything, no pressure, take everything that we talked about today in terms of, because we definitely shared a few different things for people to ponder, but just take everything that we talked about and bring it down into something bite-sized. In other words, out of everything that we talked about today, kind of put it into a little ball and just share, what do you want people to walk away with from our conversation today?
Life can be easier than we're being told it is. Meaning that we can be kinder to ourselves than we think we should be. When we engage with life, we can do more than the voices say we can do, and less than the voices say we should. So I would just offer people that there's a nicer, kinder way to be with ourselves and life.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we wish everybody on the call and listening afterwards a nice life. Who doesn't want a nice life? Alex, where, if people want to find out more about you, get your books, listen to your talk, find out about your online retreats, where do they go?
You could just Google Alex Mill Zen.
Mill,
So seriously,
M-I-L-L.
M-I-L-L, yeah, Alex Mill Zen. That's it. Just Google that. You'll have probably an entire page full. I've got the books will be on Amazon. My website will be there. Everything like that.
All right, beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that this has been helpful to you. This is the Celtic Coach saying, think big, have fun, stay curious. If you want to find out more, you can go to thecelticcoach.com, and of course we'll be posting this on all the usual social media outlets. Until the next time, everyone, we'll talk to you soon. Cheers all.